a vast field between. Evidently, there remains an immense domain of truths outside the range of natural human knowledge, and not specially revealed in the Bible. You will at once say, that whole field is covered by the one religion, one true religion. Of course it is, the teaching and ministry of men especially appointed for that purpose, and practice of example of those eminent in the Christian virtues, the writings of those versed in higher truths, are the ordinary means of spreading truth and leading men to their great destiny. But besides all this, history proves that God, for special purposes, often grants to his friends higher insight into supernatural truths and facts, which, if at his command they are recorded in writing, are intended by him as an additional source of higher knowledge and well deserve to be considered as private revelations. Earmarks of deceit. Past ages simply teem with writings that claim to be derived from or based on divine revelation or inspiration. Many of them are clearly nothing but frauds, showing the signs of conscious or unconscious hallucination. Many again seem beyond mere natural human powers of insight, but at the same time, in their authorship and tendencies, show nothing divine or beneficent, thus proving that besides human error and malice, the sinister and treacherous knowledge of malign spirits often finds its way into such writings. Ancient sorcery and magic and modern spiritism had their root in this sort of preternatural communication, to be closely scrutinized. Hence it would be foolish not to demand the closest inquiry into anything put forward as private revelation. Fortunately, it is easy to apply sure and unfailing tests. All that is necessary is to ascertain the character and motives of the writer and the result or drift of his writings. Mahomet proves himself an epileptic adventurer and his Quran a travesty of Judaism and Christianity, settling like a blight upon civilization. Joseph Smith and his companions turn out to be rebellious incendiaries and murderers, and their Books of Mormon a ridiculous fake, establishing a fanatic and bigamous theocracy. The fakir Dowie, pretending prophecy, ends as a lunatic in a bankrupt Zion, yet leaving millions to his relatives. The humbugging Eddie, after crazy quilting scraps from the Bible with shreds of Buddhism, Brahmanism, and Theosophy, shuffles off her wrinkled coil amid a numerous following of dupes who rather expected her fake science to keep her perpetually alive or raise her up from the dead. Is there any difficulty in discovering the fraud and revelations of such kind? Yet they claim divine inspiration and often contain passages which show sources of information and deceit not altogether human. The sinister manifestation of spiritism and the astounding information often furnished by mediums are not all sleight of hand or illusion of the senses. Some of these things can be explained only by assuming interference of a sinister spirit world. Really another argument for private revelations. Would it not be absurd to concede that communication with evil spirits or departed souls, damned or otherwise, and all reasonable people concede it, and deny the possibility of communing with the good spirits or souls and with God? Who would want to limit the power of God in this way? It will not do to claim that all the communication of God and the good spirits takes the ordinary course provided in the public ministry of the true religion, for it does not. St. Paul saw things that he dared not reveal, though he was not slow in writing down his other revelations. The doctrine of the Immaculate Conception and the infallibility was privately revealed many times before they were officially defined and accepted as self-understood truths by all reasonable men. Before these doctrines were defined, who had the greater prudence and insight? Those people who refused to believe these truths because they were privately revealed, or those who examined those revelations and finding them humanly credible and not contrary to the true religion, simply accepted them as revealed by God? I should think the latter showed themselves ahead of their times and far more enlightened in their belief than the former, who persisted in a finical unbelief concerning all private revelations. No difficulty to distinguish the true from the false. If we find that the author of alleged private revelations has been a faithful adherent of the one true religion established by God, that he has led a good and blameless life, that his writings do not run counter to the Bible nor to the public teachings of the true church, that he was not actuated by motives of selfish gain, pecuniary or otherwise, that the writings themselves tend toward the practice of perfection, both as far as the writer as well as the reader is concerned, that they have not been openly disapproved by the Church, then certainly, if the information recorded is such that it would presuppose supernatural inspiration or direct communication with the higher world, we are not justified in immediately rejecting the writings as fraudulent. Closer examination may easily lead to reasonable certainty that they are privately revealed, but we all know that this acceptance can never mean anything more than a mere human belief, not the belief of faith, such as, for instance, is demanded by Holy Scripture. In fact, as soon as any such writing lays claim to implicit faith, it certainly is no revelation and ought to be rejected at once as spurious. Mary of Agreda. She was the daughter of Francis Colonel and Catherine of Arana, born April 2, 1602, in the small town of Agreda, near Tarazona in Spain. In 1617, she entered the convent of the Discalced Franciscan nuns in the convent of the Immaculate Conception in Agreda, and took her vows 1 year later. In 1625, she was chosen abbess, much against her wishes, and except during a short intermission, was re-elected every 3 years until she died in 1665. The frame of her prudence and foresight, not only in the government of her convent, but in other matters, soon spread outside the convent walls, and persons of the highest rank in state and church were eager to obtain her counsel in important affairs. King Philip visited her several times in her convent, and corresponded with her about national affairs for many years. But she was no less famous for her exalted virtues. In many respects, her life was a faithful copy of that of St. Francis. The miracle of bilocation related to her is in fact more remarkable and lasted a longer time than recorded anywhere in the lives of the saints. Her good sense, her truthfulness, her sincerity, her humility, her unselfish love of God and man eminently adapted her for the communication of messages from God to men. What induced her to write? In all writing that lays claim to private revelation, the motives of the writer must be closely scrutinized. If it appears to be a self-imposed task, for selfish ends, pecuniary or otherwise, tending to particularity in religious teachings or practice not approved by the established faith, or written without knowledge of consultation of the rightful superiors, it ought to be rejected as spurious. God will reveal nothing for such purpose or under such circumstances, and he will not permit human error and deceit and the sinister influence of hell to run their natural course. Nothing of all this appears in the writings of Mary of Agreda. Though she was urged interiorly and exteriorly to record the facts of history revealed to her concerning the Mother of God, she resisted for 12 years and was finally induced to write only through the positive commands of her superiors. Reluctantly, she began her history in the year 1637 and finished it in the year 1645, continually asking to be relieved from the task because she thought herself unworthy. As soon as the insistence of her superiors relaxed and an error of judgment on the part of an outside confessor gave her a plausible excuse, she burned all her writings, thus destroying the labor of many years. When this came to the knowledge of the higher authorities, and when they insisted on her rewriting the history, which continued to be supernaturally made known to her, she again succeeded in delaying the task for 10 years. Only the strictest command under obedience and the threat of censures finally induced her to write the manuscript, which she began in 1655 and finished in 1665, and which is still preserved in the convent of Agreda. Why revealed to a woman? It is to be remembered that God's almighty power is restricted to no particular instrument. He creates out of nothing. In the case of Balaam, he used not only that wicked man, but even his beast for special revelation. It does seem that he prefers women for private revelation. He chose men to reveal the great public truths of the Bible and to attend to the public teaching, but to women in the new law he seems to have consigned the task of private revelations. At least most of the known private revelations have been furnished to us by women and not men. We must infer from this that they are better adapted for this work. In fact, no special learning or great natural insight is required of a messenger. Such qualities might tend to corrupt or narrow down the inspired message to mere human proportions, whereas private revelation is given precisely for the purpose of communicating higher truths that can be known or understood naturally. Humility, great piety, and love, deep faith are the requisites of God's special messages. messengers. Women, as a rule, are more inclined to these virtues than men, and therefore are not so apt to trim the message of God down to their own natural powers of understanding. In choosing women for his special revelations, he gives us to understand from the outset that what he wishes to reveal is above the natural faculties of perception and insight of either man or woman. How was Ciudad received? As soon as the City of God appeared in print, it was welcomed and extolled as a most wonderful work. The different translations found no less enthusiastic welcome in nearly all the European countries. It secured the immediate approbation and encomium of the ordinaries, the universities, the learned, and eminent men of Christendom. There is probably no other book which was so closely scrutinized by those in authority, both civil and religious, and afterwards so signally approved by the City of God, as the City of God. By order of Innocent the 11th, Alexander the 8th, Clement, I can't read Roman numerals very well, but Clement, Benedict, and Benedict, it was repeatedly subjected, those are popes, it was repeatedly subjected to the closest scrutiny and declared authentic, worthy of devout personal and free from error, perusal and free from error. The title Venerabilis was conferred upon the author. A large-sized volume would be required to record the praises and commendations written in favor of the great City of God. Opposition. As the City of God so strenuously maintains the prerogatives of the Mother of God and the authority of the popes, it was not to be expected that it should escape the malicious slander and intrigues of those tainted with Jansenism and Gallicanism. Many members of the Sorbonne in Paris were secret or open adherers of these sects at the time when Ciudad was first published.